Hi scholars, it's time for science with Miss Pearson. Happy Thursday. Today in science we are going to be continuing to talk about light. So far in science we have asked and answered a lot of questions about light. We talked about the difference between opaque, translucent, and transparent objects. We also answered the question, when objects block light, where does the light go? Today we're going to get the chance to answer this question. Which objects reflect the most light? So let's get into it. As a review from last time we learned that there's shiny objects and dull objects. And when you shine a light on a shiny, bright, sparkling object, it does something really cool. We saw that when you shine a light source on a shiny object, the light bounces back. It's almost like it comes back and hits you and blinds you. There's a cool science word for that, when something bounces back and hits you. And that's the word reflect. Let's say that as a team. Reflect. Reflect is what happens when you shine a light source on a shiny object. The light reflects, which means it bounces back and comes back to you. On the other hand, with dull objects, we saw something different. We did not see the light reflecting. Instead, we saw that when you shined a light on a dull object like a brick wall, it's like that object soaks up all the light so that you can see it, but the light definitely does not reflect. It definitely does not bounce back at you. Instead, it does something called absorb. So when we shine a light source on a dull object, the light gets absorbed. It gets soaked up by that object, so you're able to see it, but it doesn't bounce back at you. Today, what we are going to do is we are going to work with our friends from Brook East Boston, and specifically Miss Scherer from first grade at Brook East Boston. When I told them about the cool things you all found while exploring shiny and dull objects, Miss Scherer was like, you know what we should do? We should create a spectrum. We should figure out what objects shine or reflect the most light and what objects reflect the least amount of light. And then we should put them in order based off of how much light they reflect, with all the objects that reflect lots of light on this side and all the objects that reflect little or no light on this side. It was like, great idea. So now what we're going to do is we're going to watch what happened when Miss Scherer did this experiment and shined a light source on shiny or dull objects. Your job right now is to make sure your laser beam eyes are glued to the screen and you're thinking carefully and making predictions about what's going to happen when Miss Scherer shines the light source on shiny and dull objects. After this activity, it's going to be your job to go on Seesaw and put these objects in order. So make sure you're paying super close attention. All right, let's watch Miss Scherer's video.
So, I actually gathered some objects together and we're going to kind of test them. And then I'm going to have you go on Seesaw, and what you're going to do is then you're going to kind of put them in order. Something called a spectrum. You're going to put them in order on a line from the object that you think reflects the most light to the object that you think reflects the least amount. Okay? So, the way I actually like to test this is I like to have like a white piece of paper or a slate. And then If the light is going to be reflected, I'll notice some light on my paper. So let's try it with the mirror. Check that out. Do you see the light on the paper? Yeah. So this seems like a mirror reflects a whole lot of light. So I actually might put it over here on this side of my paper. And that would show this reflects lots of light. Now, I want to put something else shiny. It's foil. It reminds me kind of the mirror, actually. Let's test it. Ooh, do you see any light on the paper? Yeah, me too. But it doesn't seem like it reflects as much light as the mirror. For that, I might put it somewhere in the middle. It's not going to be over because it doesn't reflect as much light. But I did see some light reflect. Now let's try another object. Remember my piece of cardboard? Here, I'll move my tinfoil for now. Did you see my change on the paper? Neither did I. So this might actually go way over here. And so here's where I put my objects that reflect the most light. And here are where I put my objects where I know they're not going to reflect much light at all. And remember, there might be some objects that go in the middle. I had something interesting. Now, I know when I use tinfoil, sometimes I actually bunch it up. It's kind of why I like tinfoil, because you can bunch it up and it stays. So then I thought, wait a minute, I wonder if that affects how much light it might reflect. So I'm going to crumble up some of this tinfoil, and then I'm going to test it just like I tested the tinfoil that wasn't crumbled up. Oh, I see some light on my paper, but I definitely don't see as much as when I tested the flat tinfoil. So, if I was going to organize this, maybe I'll make my tinfoil a little bit smaller right now so that I can put it on my spectrum. I might put my tinfoil next to my mirror because it still reflects some light. And this one, I'm actually going to put a little bit closer to the objects that don't reflect the light because I didn't see as much light on my paper. Now, I have one other cool thing I want to show you. I was looking around and I found this. It's an old CD. And I noticed on one side, it was really shiny. And on the other side, it was shiny, but a little more dull. Now, can you predict which side is going to reflect more light? Do you think this side that looks a little duller, or this side that's a little shinier? Yeah, that's what I think too. Should we test it out? Okay. All right, I'm going to move my foil. All right. So I'll test the shiny side, or the shinier side first. Whoa! Check that out. It's pretty cool. It even reflects, and I see different colors in the reflection. Oh, that's a question for another day, what's going on there. But man, does that reflect a lot of light. Now, let's test the other side, okay? Woo! Did it reflect the light? Did it reflect as much of the light? Doesn't look like it to me. So that tells me something. What reflects the most light, and it has to do with how shiny and how dull something is. Now,
wow, that was so cool. Everyone say thank you, Miss Cher. I am so glad I got to see that experiment.
so
I feel like I saw it was so cool to see those shiny objects have all their light reflect back on the paper. But the dull objects like the cardboard, you didn't see any light go back on the paper. So now that I know you've used your laser beams and paid super close attention to what Ms. Scherer did, you're gonna have a chance to show me what you learned on Seesaw. On Seesaw, I put up a spectrum, and I want you to use this hand right here and click on the objects and move them and put them on the spectrum. Remember, you want to put the objects that put the most light, like the mirror, over here. But the objects that reflect the least amount of light, like the cardboard, we'll put over here. So think about where you're going to move the crumpled up foil, the not as shiny side of the CD. Oh, sorry, this is the regular foil. This is the not so shiny side of the CD. This is the crumpled up foil. Miss Pearson's so silly. And what about the paper, the shiny side of the CD, and the black? Put them along the spectrum. Once you've made sure that you put them in order from objects that reflect the most light to objects that reflect the least light, then you can go ahead and press that green check to submit your work. I can't wait to see how much you learned from Ms. Scherer at Brook East Boston. Bye, scholars. See you on Tuesday.